Now, we're going to talk to Craig here in a second. We had some difficulty getting Craig on board from Australia. Craig's actually tuning in today from Sydney. I'm up just outside of Toronto, and Craig's going to share some insights on both diet and exercise. And Craig, do you want to just join in and say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for persisting with me, Dave. We finally managed to get online and join you guys.
That's awesome. We had a little technical difficulty in the beginning with Craig, but now that we've got him here, he's here for the meat of the interview. So let's just dive right into this, Craig. One of the things Craig and I talked about this earlier, and that is people's perspective towards exercise. I think everybody wants to have that cover model look. We want to act and feel like a world-class athlete, but that's not really very realistic for most people because we're not prepared to pay the price. And Craig has some really good advice about perspective about what quality of life looks like now that he's into his 40s and what he wants that to look like for the rest of his life. And Craig, maybe you can talk about some of the things that you feel are important towards just having better quality of life as you grow older. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and certainly my own perspective and experience has changed over time. I mean, I started at college. I was in college. I wanted to get in shape. I was sick of the life I was living. I started doing triathlons. It was something I'd seen on television and I loved it immediately. So for me, my perspective in the beginning was doing something that I loved to get in shape. That perspective quickly changed. I got to a point where I was able to win races, which I never expected would happen. And then eventually to a point where I was winning world titles. So my perspective was about high performance, making money. It was my profession. And certainly my exercising, if you want to call it that, became a lot more serious and my perspective on it changed. But it's like I've gone full circle now. I'm 43 years of age. I'm certainly in the twilight of my career. I'm winding down the racing obligations. And my exercise now is really just about quality of life. And you touched on a few key points. I like the word you use, sustainable. I try and I guess work out in a sustainable way, and my perspective is that I'm trying to be healthy and fit for life. I am married with 3 young children, as you mentioned. I'm coaching my son's soccer team. I'm helping out coaching my daughter's cross-country running team. My perspective, I guess, has gone full circle. I'm back doing it because I've always enjoyed it. I do enjoy working out. But I guess my end game is a little different in that it's just about exercising to live well and about that quality of life and being there for my kids in a functional way and in a way that we can enjoy each other.
So when you think about the exercise you're doing right now and sort of what you could tell people about as far as advice goes, most people look and they go, well, it's easy for you to say because you've always been fit. For that person who's unfit right now, they're inactive, what can they do? What are the keys that we've learned about perspective, about just winning the day and taking those steps forward? I mean, you don't get to the Ironman finish line in one day. You get there one step at a time over a number of years to get there. And I think there's a lesson to be learned in that, with the fact that if we keep winning the day and investing in ourselves every day, good things are going to happen, and you'll be able to enjoy those youthful activities much later into life. What are your thoughts as you're in your 40s now and you're going to wind down your professional career? I know a lot of professional athletes actually call it quits and they just stop doing everything. And do you actually see yourself calling it quits, or do you think you'll be active for the rest of your life because it gives you the chance to have this wonderful quality of life?
No, I'll always be active. My family's very active. I think I have the benefit of hindsight and insight into exercise. And I know, apart from the fact it was my profession, I know a lot of the spin-offs and the collateral things that happen, the way it makes me feel. You get the endorphins or whatever you want to call it, that I always feel very good once I've exercised. And that spins off into other areas of my life. It makes me more productive in my business ventures and other things. So I'll always exercise. My advice to someone would be, set yourself goals, definitely long-term goals, and think about the end game. But really, you don't need to think further than today, and you just need to start. And, I work with a lot of people, not just athletes, who exercised when they were young, but then went into the corporate world, and you know, there's different constraints now. It might be time or whatever. I think the thing that I've often seen help a lot of people is you just need to implement some strategies that will assist you. You know, if it's not in your daily habit or your daily routine to exercise, then you need to change that. And I think you need to look at what the obstacles are that are preventing you. If you make a decision, and you've talked, I've been listening to what you've been saying, and a lot of it's resonated with me. You've talked about having to make that conscious decision to move forward with something, and I think if getting in shape is something you want to do for a better quality of life, you need to look at what the obstacles are that are preventing you. And the two main ones I see with the people I work with are, firstly, time, and also motivation. You know, so what I would say, I'll address the motivation aspect first. If exercising something that's not high on your list of things you love to do, it comes in many shapes and sizes, exercise. You need to implement some strategies to make it enjoyable, make it social. You know, it doesn't have to be training in isolation, sweating away in a gym. You can implement it. Exercise, it encompasses a whole lot of things. It's basically just moving. It's moving. So I would say, you know, you need to make it social and fun, and you need to do the things that you enjoy doing so it becomes part of your routine and a sustainable pattern in your life, a sustainable habit. If, for instance, you play hockey, I know you guys are in Canada, you play hockey, or there's a hockey league that you can join that. If you like tennis, maybe playing 3 sets of tennis with your spouse, your partner. If you like walking, it can be walking, it can be cycling. Exercise takes a whole range of and encompasses a whole range of activities, and I think the first thing you need to do is implement some things in your week that you actually look forward to. Heaven forbid that we should look forward to exercising, but that can be the case, and I think that helps a lot. Make it social, make it fun, and make it something that's sustainable and becomes part of your routine. Now, the second issue.
Sorry, Craig. That was really great advice, and I thought you were wrapping up there, so I'll let you go on the second issue, and I'll jump back in.
Yeah, well, just to wrap up quickly, the second issue I see with busy people is time. You know, most people work 40 hours plus a week and then have family commitments after that. So if you decide you want to make it priority, I'm here today to tell you that there are ways you can factor it in. You just need to be creative. Maybe if you catch a bus to work, you get off one bus stop early and then walk. If you have to commute between meetings or you work in a building, maybe you can take the stairs instead of an elevator. There are ways, if you're creative, that you can factor in regular exercise into your daily routine so that it can work for you.
Yeah, that's all great advice. I know a lot of the companies that or the employees that are listening today are in that situation where they're in Toronto. Today we've invited a lot of guests from the Toronto marketplace, some of the clients that I work with and their employees. And that's the situation. They've got traffic to deal with. Time is limited. They get home. They've got other, constraints with the family and whatnot they've got to deal with. And being creative with time is really important. I know between my wife and myself, my wife uses exercise every day to decompress from the stress of work, whereas I use it in the mornings. I find the time in the morning to do it so that I'm, revved up and ready to go to work. So everybody's got to find that time of day where you invest in yourself. It's a strategy that works really, really well when you start looking at it as an enjoyable experience. But, exercise alone isn't going to be the answer to dropping those 10 pounds that everybody seems to want to drop. I hear that all the time. What we hear more about is how food affects, the food choices we make affects our living. Now, I want to touch base on this with Craig because Craig and I did have a good conversation about things like cola and sugar, and Craig does have a very good perspective as a professional athlete who promotes products and uses products. And then, as a father, what he recommends to his kids. And the one thing that I want to point out is that this graphic on the left-hand side here is from the World Health Organization, and it dictates how much processed sugar your body can handle in a day. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to drop dead if you have 31 grams of sugar, but over time, there are consequences to having too much processed sugar in your bloodstream. It could be turned into fat, or it could fuel unwanted disease. But I was hoping that, Craig, you might be able to just touch base a little bit on your perspective when it comes to sugar from a performance standpoint, And then as a social part of my food chain, am I going to eat this stuff every day? And I want you to hopefully do it in a way that you feel really comfortable in sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And it's interesting because I think when you're talking about choices, it sort of ties in a little bit to what we were just talking about, perspective as well. You know, as as a world-class athlete, you know, I think of fueling and nutrition as a means to an end for high performance. But as I've mentioned, now I'm transitioning into just normal life as a husband and father, and with other interests. You know, I see it quite similarly, but it's fueling for performance in life. And you know, I'm very lucky that my wife's a great cook, and from the very beginning, I had some great advice and good insights into nutrition for not only training but for living. And the main thing was I never really used the word diet. I've never had a diet as an athlete. What I've had is a sustainable eating pattern. You know, I eat the same when I'm in heavy training loads as I do when I'm in light training loads or I'm not training. The only thing that will change is the volume of food that I eat. But certainly I'm very, very mindful of what it is that I do eat. I'm trying to put in the things into my body that fuel it well. And obviously that's not only physically, but mentally. You need to fuel your mind as well. And it's an interesting thing that you touched on sugar and certain things. I mean, a classic example is Coca-Cola. I don't think I've ever done a race in my 22 years in the sport where they haven't handed out Coca-Cola on the run course or the bike course. And, you know, I often joke with some of the athletes that I train with that it's the best sports drink ever invented. It has a simple sugar in it, which you need when you're exercising, particularly for those 4 and 8 hour events. But you would never see me sitting around drinking it socially or advocating that my children drink it. So it's situational in that regard. And you do need to be very cognitive of the choices you're making and fueling your body. And I think there's such a huge crossover between, as I mentioned, fueling for high performance as an endurance athlete and just fueling for quality of life as a person. And so that's been an easy transition to make as I've wound back my racing commitments. I've been very keen to maintain my eating habits. And you mentioned the word Spartan before. I did use that in an interview. I think to do anything over a long period of time, it needs to be sustainable. You know, there's no point having certain practices that you can manage, but if things get busy or if you get distracted, you fall off the wagon, so to speak. So, you know, for me, being in shape does encompass the two things that you've mentioned, exercising and food, and they're equally important, and they need to be done in a consistent fashion and a sustainable fashion.